Okay, I'll say it now. May I now invite the host for the Driving Actions and Solutions Plenary from the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, Ms. Amanda Curry-Brown.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm so pleased to be up here for the plenary on driving actions and solutions, and I'm so excited about the panel we've assembled for this morning. I have so often talked about going to meetings and people talk about air quality and they talk about the effects of air pollution, and everybody comes away saying someone should do something. And today we're going to hear from a lot of people who are doing something, and I think it is really exciting and really inspirational. So without further ado, I will introduce, to give us some opening remarks, Mr. Philippe Brunet from the SDC Regional Thematic Hub in Bangkok.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great honor to give some opening remarks on behalf of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation in this important session, which is organized by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, and we'll take a deep dive on driving actions and solutions. And let me start with just a few numbers. A human being requires about 1 kilogram of food per day, some 2 to 3 liters of water, and some 13,000 liters of air every single day. And what is in every liter of the air we breathe matters so fundamentally for our health, as WHO and doctors have been telling us for years. And it is somewhat striking that we have not been paying sometimes more attention to what that air contains. People in Switzerland today mostly enjoy clean air, but it hasn't always been that way. Since the 1980s, we've managed to reduce annual PM10 concentrations from around 40 micrograms per cubic meter to about 10 to 15 micrograms per cubic meter today. Strong regulation combined with fiscal and financial instruments, concrete action plans, and continuous and comprehensive monitoring have allowed us to bring down pollution levels significantly. But we still have some way to go. Air pollution in Switzerland still leads to about 2,300 premature deaths every year, and the total annual health costs are estimated to be over $7 billion, so corresponding to about 0.8% of GDP. And at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, we have supported efforts to improve air quality for over 30 years. We see it as essential for meeting the Sustainable Development Goals due to the health, economic, climate, and environmental impacts of air pollution. It's also key to meeting the promise of leaving no one behind, which is at the heart of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. While air pollution affects everyone, vulnerable populations and women are disproportionately affected, as they tend to be more exposed to pollution sources and have less access to healthcare. From our experience in Switzerland and in our international cooperation, I just want to highlight a few important levers for driving action. Firstly, generating a solid evidence base to inform policy making. And one example is to precisely know the sources of air pollution in order to know where to focus efforts. In China, with Swiss research partners, the Paul Scherrer Institute, which is here at this conference, and ETH Zurich, and with the Chinese Academy of Sciences, we have supported the development of innovative techniques for air quality monitoring that enable near real-time source apportionment, which could be game-changing for policy making. These have so far been piloted with 5 cities in China. And making the economic case is also essential to secure sufficient resources for action. And here, the upcoming Global Economic Assessment of Climate and Clean Air, being developed by the CCAC, will make a very important contribution in this regard. This evidence can help get the effective policies in place, which requires a smart mix of measures, as many of yesterday's sessions outlined, combining well-designed regulations, accompanied by taxes and incentives, and action plans with strong enforcement and monitoring. To then actually achieve reductions, we need to work within and across sectors to identify concrete solutions tailored to the context and that are scalable. It's also clear, and we heard this in many of the sessions yesterday, that it's not only a technological issue. The social and cultural dynamics and the economic feasibility of the measures are just as important for success. And listening to the people who are closest to the problem, and hence closest to the solutions, is really critical. We're glad to be starting a new project together with Germany and led by GIZ, the Southeast Asia Climate and Clean Air Initiative, or SICA in short, that aims to tackle the thorny issues of agricultural burning, forest fires, and waste burning in the Mekong region, finding workable solutions together with the farmers and with communities, and engaging the private sector and policymakers at all levels. Let me also mention the importance of regional collaboration. Air pollution is a transboundary challenge that knows no borders, and successfully addressing it requires going beyond national action alone. So we have been increasing our engagement to support regional efforts to tackle air pollution in Asia in recent years. We're working with the World Bank, with ICIMOD, and with the governments of India, Nepal, and Bangladesh to strengthen air quality management analytics, governance, and cross-jurisdictional coordination across national and state levels in the Indo-Gangetic Plain, the region that is most affected by air pollution in the world. And through the SICA initiative that I just mentioned earlier, we stand ready to support ASEAN in its efforts to tackle transboundary haze pollution and implement its second haze-free roadmap. And together with Clean Air Asia, we're supporting regional knowledge exchange among Asian cities. I would also like here to recognize the leadership of South Africa and Dr. Patience Gwaze, who we'll be hearing from in a moment, in elevating air quality as a priority. Generally is very much in the spirit of the Cape Town Ministerial Declaration, which highlighted the importance of international collaboration to combat transboundary air pollution and particularly encourage collaboration on regional clean air programs to share expertise and solutions. And finally, I want to underscore the importance of strong coalitions and partnerships to drive action. We need to engage all stakeholders, public and private sectors, civil society, academia, in a whole of society approach. A powerful example of such an alliance is the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, which brings together over 200 partners, state and non-state, which are all committed to the protection of climate and improving air quality through actions to reduce short-lived climate pollutants. Switzerland is proud to be a partner of the CCAC, and we have been one of the main donors to the coalition, contributing over $22 million since 2013. And let me highlight just two elements of the CCAC's current work, starting with its Clean Air flagship, which aims to galvanize efforts to accelerate clean air action. Today, the CCAC will be launching 2 new packages of sectoral guidance on road transport in the Air Quality Management Exchange, AQMX, vehicles emission standards, and inspection and maintenance of vehicles. These are a complement to the transport guidance launched at UNEA 7 on fuel quality, and we'll be hearing more about them in the panel. In January, the roadmap to end open burning of waste in Africa was launched. And today, the CCAC is launching the Asia roadmap, which is intended to create the enabling conditions to change behavior, policy, and practice to end the open burning of waste. And at COP30, the CCAC launched a super pollutant action accelerator to drive deep and sustained reductions in super pollutant emissions. A key mechanism here is to embed dedicated teams to enable coordinated national delivery in the countries. And several of the countries who are part of the very first cohort of this program are here at the conference and will be discussing their plans and experiences. In closing, the Better Air Quality Conference is also an excellent opportunity to forge new partnerships and alliances to drive the concrete action that we need and to finally unlock the barriers to action at scale. So here I want to thank Clean Air Asia, the Asian Development Bank, the CCAC, UNESCAP and UNEP, as well as the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority and the Pollution Control Department of Thailand for bringing us together this week. We have an excellent lineup of distinguished policymakers, researchers, and experts for this morning's plenary. And so without further ado, it's my great pleasure to pass the word to Dr. Patience Gwaze, the Chief of the Directorate of Air Quality Management in the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment of South Africa for the first keynote address. Thank you.
Distinguished guests in the room, CCAC, Clean Air Asia, thank you for this opportunity that you have given South Africa and Africa and G20 to share some of the experience we have had in building the case for air quality through a forum that has significant influence in the global economy, in the global dynamics. And it is our view as South Africa that building political will through the G20 will fast-track all the interventions that we are proposing, we are implementing in air quality for a better future. I'll give a perspective on the G20, the work that we undertook, the political will that was put together. And in doing so, I would like to acknowledge a couple of colleagues. I would like to acknowledge the Climate and Clean Air Coalition for the support in developing this case, as well as the technical paper. I would like to acknowledge the UNEP, the Council for Scientific Research in South Africa, as well as the Clean Air Fund for the support. The declaration was made on the 17th of October 2025, and it was an exciting moment for air quality in the country as well as on the globe, and we call it the Cape Town Declaration. This declaration took us from Kruger National Park, where we demonstrated from the biodiversity perspective the dehorning of the rhino for the protection of rhinos, until Cape Town, where we then put forward the declaration for the country. What was the focus for us, and why did we put this declaration forward? And why did we separate this declaration from climate change? We understand the core benefits, but we also recognize that without pulling out air quality from the climate change negotiations, we will continue to get air quality discussions being lost, particularly into the components of core benefits, without elevating the issues of health and human health impact that are critical for us to pull out from the global discussions and global agenda. So we also acknowledge that there is a lot of work that the United Nations is undertaking. The United Nations General Assembly activities, the UNEA Resolution 610, the World Health Assembly Roadmap to Clean Air, the World Bank report that came out, and in the G20 declaration, we took all of those activities and considered not duplicating efforts, but elevating some of the areas that we thought were key focus for the globe to consider in air quality management. So in terms of background, we have heard a lot of on this forum. 8.1 million people are affected globally every year. The cost to the economy is over 6 trillion annually, or 4.6 of the GDP of the globe. These impacts are felt globally. However, 95% of the deaths are linked to pollution in developing countries, to women, to children. They are vulnerable, who in most cases are the ones that least have the expertise and the financial resources to address poor equality in their households. I think there was a comment yesterday about a woman driving a child to work and understanding the intervention that she can put in place. But the common communities and the poor do not have the kind of luxury to make different decisions in most cases. The pollution impacts are not shared equally and are subject to geography, to demography, and the economy. And 700,000 children are affected under 5 every year. So there is the challenges of stunted growth, challenges of pregnant women, and the magnitude of the problem are expected to increase due to globalization, population increase, urbanization, and economic growth. We also understand that improvements to air quality have been shown to return significant benefits to the economy and to human health. So in terms of investments, $1 in air quality investment in some countries, they've seen a $30 return in terms of human or human health care cost in terms of the economy. The World Bank states that by 2040, if we happen to halve the challenges of air pollution, we could reduce deaths by 28%, and continue to increase the global economy. So the case for air pollution is that with investment comes significant returns. In the technical paper that we put together, we identified 4 challenges: transboundary pollution, access to monitoring and data, the challenges of capacity, the issue of funding and resourcing, which we have had many discussions as yesterday. And we also then provided within each of the 4 components the countries that have put interventions in place through case studies and how those interventions have been recognized, and to show that these challenges can be overcome through concerted effort. So the challenges that we have to deal with around cross-border pollution, where has it worked? It has worked in Asia, it has worked in Europe. It can work if it's implemented in other countries like Latin America and Africa. Air pollution knows no boundaries. Applying an air-shared approach in addressing pollution is critical. We had the example from India yesterday through a separate engagements. Evidence-based collaboration, acting on all levels of government. Our governments have got multiple levels that create complexity, even though air pollution does not know any boundaries. The context of addressing measures, multiple pollutants through multiple sectors to address the problem simultaneously and looking for synergies. harmonizing approaches and standards, policies where possible, and building technical capacity. We recognize the challenges that many countries lack reliable data and reliable monitoring information. There's a lot of information available. It's a matter of integrating the information that we have to apply a range of available tools, focusing on incremental improvements. It's always easy to take difficult to take the first step, but once the first step is taken, it's now important to build on what we have built. Making equity information available. I think we had a session in another where we presented what South Africa has done in presenting equity information to be freely available to the public. Equality monitoring is an expensive exercise in terms of building the resources, putting the infrastructure in place, but if this information is made available to the public, you can start to seeing the returns from equality forecasting and others. Looking at issues of collaboration, issues of building in capacity from monitoring to modeling to alternative monitoring, introduction of low-cost sensors. Looking at investments in supply, in equipment, investment in maintenance, investment in technical capacity, and acting now on sources that we already know. What has also worked in building capacity, sharing best practices, and this forum is a good example of that, where multiple countries are coming together to share expertise, creating partnerships, and defining common goals, drawing on experience from all relevant stakeholders. And it's critical for that because the three spheres of government, for example, in our country, are not enough without bringing the NGOs, without bringing the private sector, and also bringing in business. Looking across jurisdictions. Insufficient funding. We acknowledge that equality is the least funded environmental challenge, and yet it's got the biggest impact on human health and the economy. Looking at access to removing barriers to access funds for equality improvements, repurposing subsidies for pollution sectors, and incentivizing the private sector for investment, and up and above all, mobilizing the philanthropy sector for resources. The recommendations from G20 were many, but having identified all the challenges that we have and looking at the case studies, we made recommendations for the G20 and globally to look at the support action for transboundary pollution, promoting emerging mutual beneficial and technical exchange programs and expertise, looking at increased funding, and I think yesterday there was a session to discuss on how can we break the barriers for funding of air quality programs, looking at the core benefits or looking beyond core benefits, and also addressing towards working for countries with the least ability to put resources in place. And this took us to the declaration, and in the interest of time, I will just leave the presentation for you to note. What was important for us was to recognize the UNEA resolution, to look at encouraging collaboration across Africa, Latin America, and the developing countries, to look at encouraging sharing of best practice and available technologies, promoting adoption of and fostering synergies among different policies and sectors, as well as looking at reliable ways of open information to all, for all. We are convening a technical workshop soon. We want to bring and start putting action to some of the interventions and recommendations that we made. And it is the declaration that we have put together as South Africa and the G20 that we know is going to work on improving the global political will that must translate the action, that must translate the words to action through financing, through collaboration, and through capacity building. And we also look at supporting governments and organizations in developing countries, especially in developing countries, to prioritize and institutionalize clean air goals from policy to monitoring to management and markets. And for that, I have to acknowledge the last slide to the discussion we had with the World Bank, which I thought was important to consider those elements. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Patience, and I think that really sets the stage for our next presenter, Dr. Eric Zussman, who's a senior policy researcher at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, who's going to talk about, for a bit further, about breaking down barriers to action.
So, good morning, colleagues. How is everybody doing today? Excellent. Okay, so as Amanda kindly highlighted, I'm going to talk a lot about breaking down barriers to action. And I want to put my argument right at front and center of the presentation. What I'm going to argue today is that, of course, we need integrated solutions to climate and clean air. But at the same time, if we don't put in place an enabling environment to implement those solutions, we're only getting us about halfway to where we need to be. The enabling environment is absolutely critical to realizing the co-benefits of climate change and clean air. And we're working on this topic in a more, well, shall I say, more systematic way under this new economic assessment on climate and clean air. It's sort of billed as a mini Stern review that will be released in July. And this economic assessment, as you can see, has several innovative features. We're looking at a broader range of impacts. We're also doing a more systematic economic assessment of both climate and clean air. But one of the key pieces of the assessment is also a more systematic analysis of barriers to implementation and how they can be overcome. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I move through the presentation. Now, to look at this more systematic assessment, we weren't able to look at all of the solutions that are going to be in the report. There's 25 key solutions that we're recommending. We're looking at 9 that basically span 3 or 4 key sectors. So we're focusing on the transport sector, agriculture and cook stoves, and also waste management. And in order to look at the barriers and enablers, we're breaking them up into 4 big categories. I want to highlight that this is not the only way to break these categories up, and also these categories can be mutually reinforcing, sometimes causing lock-ins, but at the same time, if we strengthen the enabling environment, there's also strong potential for virtuous cycles of reform that can build momentum and drive transformative change. So to highlight, those 4 categories are technological enablers and barriers, institutional enablers and barriers, social enablers and barriers, and economic enablers and barriers. And so we're trying to understand how much these things might stand in the way of effectively implementing solutions in these 3 areas or 4 areas, and then how can we remove them, and how can governments put in place, once again, this enabling environment to drive quick wins and potentially lead to transformative change. Now, in terms of the actual description of the barriers, of course, you'll be able to read the report eventually, but we decided to go with rather broad descriptions, recognizing that some people might want to go into a little bit more detail. And 2 of the things I'm going to focus on a lot today in my discussion are institutional challenges and enablers. So we've talked a lot about the coordination vertically and horizontally, across agencies, within agencies, and within levels and across levels of government. We've also talked a little bit about design flaws in policies, perverse incentives in policies, misallocated subsidies. So we're branding that institutional challenges. And then we have some of the social issues, which gets us into things, we're talking about just transitions and inclusivity. And so here we have the limited acceptance of different types of social and technological and changes, and not necessarily a clear recognition of the benefits of those changes. And then also some of the challenges of accepting new technology. So for instance, things like new cook stoves are not always necessarily a welcome change for, families. So how do we change perceptions of some of these things, and how can we clear some of these barriers once again? And the economic and technological, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now, but you can see the definitions right there. Now, one of the reasons I want to focus on the institutional and social, and also I want to focus on this report, is one of the novel things or the innovative things that we've done is we know that these things exist, okay? I mean, we've heard lots of presentations about some of these challenges and the ways that they can be overcome, and Patience did a wonderful job of describing how we're moving forward in covering over some of these things or burying some of these things in the context of Africa. But one of the things we did with this study is we did surveys in 4 countries, China, India, Nigeria, and Mexico. These countries constitute 40% of the world's population. And so we paired our surveys with systematic literature review on challenges to implementation. And essentially what we were trying to understand is how much these different categories of barriers or implementation challenges might slow our transition to an optimal pathway, an optimal implementation pathway. And what we essentially found is over a nominal 15-year period that collectively all of these things across these 4 countries could slow things down by somewhere between 7 and 9 years or so. So about half of your implementation potential is bound up in your enabling environment. I'm not going to say that if you do everything in an enabling environment, you're going to definitely accelerate everything perfectly. But like programs such as the CCAC Accelerator Program and the AQMX program that are helping to put in place these enabling reforms and cover over or try to dismantle some of these barriers are absolutely critical to accelerate the pace of implementation. And as you can see, get us closer to this sort of optimal pathway. And like I said, one of the novel things is now we have numbers on what these delays might look like. And one of the key things with those numbers then is we can feed that back into some of the economic modeling scenarios. And then we can say to governments, hey, we understand that you're adopting, 17 of our 25 solutions, and that's great. We love that idea. We're so happy that you're pushing that forward. But at the same time, if you don't put in place essential capacities and the coordination mechanisms to implement these things, you're not going to capture the full benefits of what we're trying to do here. And so what we show through this economic study is between 2025 and 2050, by putting in these delays back into the modeling, we show that the investment on capacity building, these things are typically not so, we know they're critical, but they're not so visible to policymakers, are huge. We show across the world that they could total up to about $8 trillion between 2025. And my reading skills are not so great here, but we also show that there's also huge benefits on the health side of things. So for instance, we could save enormous amounts of cases of asthma in kids and other types of health impacts, which is also one of the other innovative pieces of this study. So our messaging, I think, is becoming clearer and clearer and more precise. The enabling environment is absolutely critical to implement the solutions that the CCAC and partners have been promoting. And so policymakers really need to make sure that on one hand, they're adopting the solutions, and on the other hand, they're building the capacities, the stakeholder engagement mechanisms to make sure that they're implemented effectively. And there's huge economic gains from doing that, and there's huge health gains from doing that. Now, the other thing that we're saying with this report is this is lovely, and we have the economic numbers to underpin our analysis now, but we draw upon case studies in these 4 key countries I mentioned previously, China, India, Nigeria, and Mexico, and then we say, all right, what are some of the successful examples of how those countries have put in place enablers, social, technical, institutional, and economic. And we do that once again for these collection of solutions in 3 or 4 key sectors. So we have 4 key countries. We have about 9 more specific solutions in these 4 or 3 key sectors. And then we point to specific examples of how countries have put in place key enablers. So here I'm just highlighting in terms of social enablers. We actually have a list of 8 targeted enablers for the institutional, social, economic, and technical. And so in the case of open burning, and we're talking about social barriers and awareness raising, for instance, we highlight some of the efforts in Nigeria to use capacity building workshops to raise awareness of farmers of the benefits and some of the dangers of open burning of biomass and agricultural residue. And in the case also on the social side of things, and moving a little bit more into this inclusivity, just transition space, we highlight in the case of India and their cook stove programs, how they've integrated gender into some of the key cook stove programs, and how that's enabled the implementation and also raised awareness among a key stakeholder group. So we have examples both in terms of 8 very sector-specific and rather narrow targeted enablers. And then we also have cases that demonstrate what I would call more cross-cutting mostly institutional enablers. So in this space, we're talking about things like interministerial coordination mechanisms. We're talking about multi-level governance and vertical transfers of resources from national to local level. We're also talking about strengthening science policy interfaces, something we heard a lot in the keynote address yesterday from Professor Huckabeen, and we've seen in many other places. So, of course, you'll see these slides and you can look into more detail, but one of the key things I want to underline is we don't see these enablers as sort of isolated things. Not every country has to adopt all of them, and we realize that maybe all 16 or so is a bit of a mountain to climb early on, but we do want to highlight that we see these enablers as sort of related to each other. The cross-cutting, mostly institutional enablers sort of form the outside rim, and these more targeted sector-specific enablers are nested within them. And once again, if countries are able to put in an effective enabling environment and capture the nice linkages between these cross-cutting outside elements and these inner targeted sector-specific elements, we see potential for virtuous cycles of reform, positive inertia that drives the types of transformative changes that lie at the root of the work we're doing here at the BAQ and the work of the CCAC and many other partners. So let's work together to drive this positive momentum. And I think the last thing I'm going to highlight is if we're going to do this, and if we're going to build political will to do this, the last thing I would love to see us get behind is stronger presence and recognition of the importance of clean air in the SDGs. I'm going to ask a quick question and see if anybody has the answer. Clean air, air pollution, what number SDG, I'm just going to do this real quick, what number SDG is clean air? Okay, so we have 1, 3 over here, and then we have a lot of nones. And the correct answer is none. It's actually, there's 3 targets on clean air, but they're scattered against other SDGs. And what's happened is about 30% of countries in their SDG, their VNR reports, don't mention clean air once, and about 60% of countries mention it less than 5 times. If we're going to build political momentum and get the attention of ministries of foreign affairs and finance, we need to have a clean air goal, and we need to feature prominently in SDG reporting. I'll stop right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. So now we have a really exciting panel assembled, and first I'm going to invite up each panelist in turn to make about a 5-minute intervention about some of the work that they are doing. If I could ask that each of you, once you've completed your intervention, take your spot at the rostrum so we're ready for the panel discussion at the end. First, I'd like to invite up Dr. Krista Hassenkopf, who's the director of the Clean Air Program at the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago, EPIC. And EPIC's work was one of the things that informed the paper from the G20 and the ultimate declaration. So I think very exciting to hear what you've got ahead.
Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be here, and thank you so much to the session organizers for the invitation to join today. So to get right to it, one of the things we've heard already this morning throughout the conference, pretty much at every conference on clean air, is the lack of funding. And so I wanted to take a beat and talk about what does that look like in concrete terms across the world. So we're going to do a quick comparison. So let's take Norway. Population, 6 million. The number of total life years lost due to PM 2.5 relative to the annual average WHO guideline, 0. Pretty nice air apparently in Norway. The number of high quality reference grade monitors sharing data in a fully open way, 66. Pretty good number for a country that size. So now let's compare it to not 1, but 3 countries, Bangladesh, DRC, and Guatemala. These countries have the highest PM 2.5 levels in their region on an annual average basis. Population of those combined, 300 million, about 50 times Norway. The total life years lost due to PM 2.5 in these 3 regions combined, is 1.3 billion. And the total number of high-quality reference-grade monitors currently sharing fully open data that you can access historically and in real time anywhere in the world? 0. And so I think this really underscores Patience's point, I'm going to paraphrase, but that one data point really does matter and can be transformative, and it gives an intuitive sense that a small amount of funding can really have a huge impact when this is the landscape. And so it's not just these 3 countries, it's actually many more. By our analysis at EPIC, I think there's about 83 countries where you could have a modest intervention where you're supporting high agency groups in countries to put up air quality monitoring with a plan to drive national level impact and have some success. And so if you look at these 86 countries, actually we know from Clean Air Fund data, if you looked at 46 of them, combined all the philanthropic funding that those receive, the total amount those 46 countries receive on an annual basis is less than $100,000, so a lot of zeros in there. Meanwhile, we know from research, so not just the intuitive case, but from research, there's a causal link between launching PM 2.5 monitoring efforts in places with very little or even no data, existing data in a region, and seeing a significant decrease in PM 2.5 over time, about 10 micrograms per cubic meter over a 5-year period. That's pretty significant. But let's say you're really skeptical and you don't think this is actually the case. So let's do a very skeptical back-of-the-envelope calculation. You decide to invest $100,000 a year in these 83 countries for 5 years, same time scale as what we think the research is telling us you'll see a difference. That's $41.5 million. And here's where the skeptical part comes in. You don't think it's going to work in all 83 countries. You think it's going to work in one. And my clickers, oh, there we go. And you also think that in that one country, that relatively small country, we're going to pick on Sri Lanka, of 20 million people, there's only going to be a small change, 2 micrograms per cubic meter in this intervention. So if you do that and you pick the most conservative numbers you can and figure out what's the avoided health costs, how much could you benefit from this small intervention in one place where it actually worked and the other 82 it didn't, by my measure, it's at least 5 times the amount that you invested in that whole portfolio of 83 countries. And when I did this calculation again, I picked the most conservative numbers I could, and then I even divided by half to be like illogically conservative, just in case. And I recommend anyone else tries this to see as well what they get. But the point is, this is a philanthropic jackpot of impact potentially. So that's why we launched the EPIC Air Quality Fund about a year and a half ago to basically support high agency local actors to drive national level air policy change with open PM 2.5 data. These are our 83 priority countries. Wherever you see a gold dot, that's where we have an awardee, 31 awardees currently in 19 countries. And I had very high expectations of what folks would achieve, and they've really gone above that. I've been flabbergasted at what they've achieved in the last year and a half. Awardees have nearly doubled the number of active open air quality monitoring data points in Africa. 7 awardees have had a national level impact already. This includes the first reference grade monitor in Liberia, Gambia getting through its parliament legislation that'll let it establish its first PM 2.5 standard or any air quality standards. The Ghana EPA is using the support to implement existing policy on the books. And so they're doing the dang thing, and we want them to do it some more, and we want more people to do it. And so that's why today I'm so excited to share that we're opening up another round, a call for applications, and I can't think of a better group of folks or with a better network across the world to help us get the word out. So please let your colleagues know this opportunity exists. If you see anyone from EPIC around, we have cards to give out to share this information. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Krista. And now we'll have Dr. Hiroaki Takaguchi speaking about JICA's work building capacity, including their use of AQMX in training.
Good morning. My name is Hiroaki Takiguchi. I'm from Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. Today, I'd like to talk about capacity building, including use of AQ Max. As you know, in yesterday's plenary, the necessity of capacity building was discussed. So I'd like to follow up the discussion with my intervention. When we talk about capacity development, I think it operates three levels. First, the individual level. At this level, we focus on strengthening the competencies of administrative personnel responsible for air quality management. Second, the organizational level. The objective is to enhance the management capacity of national and local government agencies in charge of air quality. Third, the societal level. This level involves clarifying the roles of different stakeholders, ensuring compliance with emission standards by business operators, and raising public awareness of air quality issues. To improve air quality in a sustainable manner, all three levels of capacity development are essential. Next, let me introduce JICA's key intervention at the individual level. JICA provides the Knowledge Co-Creation Program, KCCP. This was previously known as the training program. We changed the title because we learn each other. One KCCP focuses on air quality management. I serve as the coordinator of the program, and this is a one-month program held annually at JICA Yokohama. We invite participants from central and local governments in developing countries, as well as research institutes. In the program, we request participants to develop an action plan addressing air quality issues in their countries. In the program, I encourage participants to use AQ Max when they develop their action plans. This is the slide I use in the program. I think AQ Max is a very useful platform for gaining knowledge and practical insights on air quality management, and many participants find it valuable when designing their action plans. Next, let me touch upon our efforts at the organizational and societal levels. This slide shows the objectives of our technical cooperation projects in Asia. As you can see, capacity development is a top priority across all these projects. We work closely with national and local governments to strengthen institutions and systems for air quality management. This slide illustrates the wide range of stakeholders involved in air quality management, not only the environmental ministry, but also relevant ministries, local governments, researchers, and private sector organizations. Improving air quality requires coordinated actions by all these actors. Here is one example from our project. In the PM 2.5 project in Thailand, we organize seminars and training sessions for stakeholders to strengthen their technical understanding and institutional capacity. I will stop here. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Dr. Takaguchi. So for our next two panelists, we'll have interventions that are focused on kind of sectoral solutions. First up is Jun Zhang, who's the Asia Pacific lead for the Sustainable Mobility Unit at the UN Environment Program.
Good morning. Are the slides up? Okay. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers and colleagues at CCAC and Clean Air Asia for convening this dialogue. I have 5 minutes to actually give you a snippet of the work that UNEP has been doing in Cambodia, supporting the implementation of more stringent vehicle emission standards, as well as by looking at also beyond the emission standards, issues of used vehicles, management, which I would not be able to delve very deep here, but just wanted to note that this work has been largely based on collaboration between the CCAC, of course, but also technical support from UNEC colleagues and Clean Air Asia colleagues as well. There is a little bit of issue with the slides, but I can already begin by talking a little bit about where we are with in terms of the status of the Cambodia. Cambodia's vehicle fleet is expanding rapidly. If you have been to Phnom Penh, you can see compared to, especially somebody who living in Thailand, the number of vehicles are comparatively much smaller. That also presents an opportunity where that we can leapfrog from before so many more vehicles enter the market. So as of 2023, Cambodia has around 5.6 million motorcycles and around 700,000 light-duty vehicles and just less than 300,000 heavy-duty vehicles. This puts motorcycles, which actually is a bit jumbled. So motorcycle category also includes three-wheelers in the registry's current data that we were able to get. So that means around 85% of the national fleet represent two- and three-wheelers. This doesn't mean that work on other segments of the vehicles less important, because we do, have the critical moment to intervene at this moment. Another thing to note that is high, predominantly portion of the vehicles when they're first registered are secondhand imported from abroad, mainly coming from the US, Korea, and Japan, etc. This means without intervention, according to our baseline exercise on fuel economy, this average fuel economy is projected to worsen with the growing fleet, and also the fleet becoming, in terms of trends, becoming older and also bigger, and therefore less fuel efficient. So this is going to reach more than 3 times the target set on the Global Fuel Economy Initiative. And this is, we do note that the Cambodia also does not have national fuel economy standards for vehicles yet. What are the status of implementation regarding vehicle emission standards? Euro 4 has been implemented in 2022, and since the adoption of Euro 4, UNEP, with the support of Clean Air Asia, in close collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, has been supporting the implementation of the Euro 4. Euro 5, it's in a I would say it's in a transitory stage. The first goal was to implement around 2025, but based on the latest consultation, it's still in transition phase. We note that 2027, as far as I know, is the target timing for Euro 5 transition. But at the same time, Ministry of Environment Cambodia has been very proactive and already setting out the roadmap for Euro 6 adoption. And this has been from the very beginning under close collaboration between CCAC and UN Environment, and with the technical support of Clean Air Asia colleagues. The Euro 6 roadmap has been developed. And on the course of achieving that, we have undertook several capacity building events starting from May 2023, and a couple more follow-up discussions around the issues of used vehicles management, and also vehicle emission standards, and also fuel quality monitoring guidelines that we developed together. And most recently, in June 2025, with the key delegation from Cambodia involved in vehicle inspection, visiting the sites in Thailand. What is a couple of technical support output? I'll be very quick to just cover the remaining slides. So the monitoring guidelines for fuel quality and also safe vehicle emission standard have been developed together to support Euro 4 implementation. Roadmap for Euro 6 still pending joint ministerial declaration. This is why we are excited to announce that with the new CCAC support and in the continuation of the successful partnership between Clean Air Asia and UNEP, we are about to launch another journey to really push towards the remaining steps, capacity building opportunities, and also additional consultations that I really need to make sure that all the stakeholders are aligned towards the adoption of Euro 6. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
And now we'll have Ms. Miho Hayashi, who's Program Manager at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, talking about the launch of a roadmap for eliminating open waste burning in Asia.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank CCAC and Clean Air Asia for inviting me and speak about the project we have done with the fund of CCAC today. My name is Miho Hayashi. I'm a program manager from Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. So today, actually, we haven't heard a lot about the waste burning. We heard about agricultural crop burning, but today I'm going to talk about the burning of the municipal waste. And then I'd like to show some numbers for you to easily understand the significance of the impact. The first, 256 million tons of waste is burned annually in Asia. And then out of that, most of the part is burned roadsides, backyards, and the streets. And then the small portion is burned in a dump site, but even though it's small, the toxicity level is quite high because lots of materials, elements are dumped in the dump sites. 62% of the global black carbon emission is actually generated from Asia. And then if we talk about the CO2 equivalent, 249 million tons of CO2 emission is generated from Asia through the open burning practice. And 82% of the premature deaths global is also occurs in Asia from open burning practice. And then you can see from these numbers that how significant it is, the issue of open burning of municipal waste. But having said that, the open burning issue is not really big concern. We talk about a lot about the emission from the transport sectors, industry, and even agriculture burning and forest fire. But we don't really talk about the burning of waste, municipal waste. However, it's very common practice, and then this is a global issue. And through this implementation of the project, we identify the barriers that stop from solution. And then as Eric also mentioned, the institutional capacity, weak enforcement. That's the really big barriers. And why does that happen? It's a low political will, and also the fragmented institutional institutions, the responsibilities. That we also heard from the session yesterday, and I guess the Department of Pollution Control from the Thailand also mentioned, then we really agree with this result. So what unlocks the political actions? The first, the commitment, national commitment is very important. And we, in this session, that we talk about integration of the air, clean air into the climate strategy. Yes, but the same way, we need to integrate the waste management into the air quality strategy and also the climate strategy. That's how we can improve the political will. And another one is the alternative options. We need to provide alternative options to stop open burning of the waste. Basically, we also identify the causes why people continue practicing the open burning. It's because there is no enough waste collection service, and also there is no proper waste disposal site management at dump sites or even landfill sites. That's the major reason why people continue doing it. And then we also repeat saying that the regional collaboration is quite important. So we have to get together, talk about the same issue, and then talk about the solution. That's the factor that can also contribute to the unlock the political action. So I'd like to show some the achievement. Actually, this was a big achievement through this project, which is the Kathmandu Declaration. I think some of the participants here might participate in this policy dialogue. We gather the participants from different sectors, NGOs, academias, of course, policymakers, and then not only from the waste sector, but also from climate and the air quality management. We discussed the same issues, and then challenges, also towards a solution. And then interestingly, we realized that the issues they face is similar, right? And then at the beginning, we also heard that the launch of the open burning report, the roadmap, but again, we would like to duplicate, even multiply this movement of the regional activity towards the region and towards the global. This open burning roadmap is available online, and actually the roadmap for Africa has been already published thanks to the effort from the Engineering X and also the practical action. The roadmap for Latin America and the Caribbean is also coming up, led by the ISWA. So we call for the regional effort. We are going to not only stop just by developing the roadmap, this needs to be implemented. Then we really ask for your collaboration. So if you are interested in joining us, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.
And for our final panel intervention, we've heard a bit this week already about the benefits and effectiveness and efficiency in integrating climate and air quality policy. So we'll have Dr. Zhang, who's a research associate at the Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning, to speak about China's experience with finding synergies between air pollution control and climate change.
Morning, everyone. I'm Yizhen Zeng from Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning. So I'm talking about the synergies between air pollution control and climate change mitigation. First is that why we need co-control. Here's China's answer. We got air pollution, despite that we have already done very good progress in reducing PM 2.5 levels. And also we are facing pressing issue from climate change. So from the political level, we now got the Beautiful China initiative, And also we have the carbon pledge to peak and to reach carbon neutrality. So the synergetic control then become very important in China's policy framework. Now in China, we use the coordinated efforts to reduce pollution and carbon emission as the steering wheel to leading the green transition of the national economy, which place these efforts on a very high level. And then the question is that why we can't do co-control? Because in China now, based on our analysis, nearly all SO2 and NOx emissions, half of the VOC's emissions and about 85% of primary PM 2.5 share same sources with CO2 emissions. So if we do some actions from the root, such as we close factories or we remove diesel trucks into electric vehicles, we can directly reduce air pollution and CO2 emissions simultaneously. So same emission source serves as the scientific basis for this synergetic control. If we want to do co-control, the first thing I think is to quantify synergetic levels. So what kind of measures we can apply for co-control is very important. Let's take the transportation sector in China as an example. We have many policies implemented during the past decade, including the strengthened emission standard and fuel quality, phase out of outdated vehicles, improve fuel efficiency, and also promotion of electric vehicles, and also change the diesel truck-based freight to railway or waterway-bound freight. But how we can evaluate the impact of different measures on different policies? Here we provide a tool that is called Synergy Index. We integrate the two dimensions. One is air pollution-related health benefits. One is the greenhouse gases abatement associated with specific measures. Together, then we can evaluate the synergy level of each measure. Here's the result and also the conclusion. So based on our analysis, we see that substantial synergies have already been achieved, but more synergies could be expected in China's on-road transportation sector. So all those circles in the triangle means the overall synergies, and other circles means measure-specific analysis. Our analysis shows that traditional policies have drove early achievements in synergies, including the strengthening of emission standard and also phasing out of outdated vehicles. But structural policies are playing increasingly important role now. And if we strengthen or we intensify the transformation in the transportation structure and also the vehicle fleet structure, we will get a very high increment in the synergetic index, 45%. And now actually, based on what already happened in China, I think the synergy index is already surpassing our evaluation, because now in 2025, the penetration rate of new energy vehicles for passenger vehicles already surpassed 50% in China, which means that more than half of the new vehicles running in China's road is already electric vehicle. We don't have too much emissions on the road. So this analysis suggests that we can identify what kind of measures that can provide synergetic impact and what we can do in the next phase. So for the implications, most of the results and conclusions I have already made. But the last one, I want to emphasize that if we want to promote the co-control in the future, I think scientific tools for evaluating such kind of synergetic levels is very important. And it will serve as a very critical lever for the topic today, from science to policy translation. Okay, so that's all my presentation today, and we are very happy to promote co-control idea and also welcome collaboration for building new scientific tools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I'd like to ask Eric and Philippe if you could return to the stage, and we'll hand over moderation of a discussion of the panel to Dr. Patience Gwaze.
Thank you to the panel members. I will be asking a set of questions for your intervention. I'll start with Philip, Hiroaki, and Dr. Zeng. My question is as follows. What opportunities do you see for government to work together to achieve global action on air quality? What action do you see for government to work together to achieve global action on air quality? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. I think traditionally air pollution has been viewed as a local or national issue. But in recent years, its severity and cross-boundary impacts have gained increasing global attention, such as G20 declaration. So in response, international and regional organizations have begun offering useful tools and platforms to support coordinated action. As I presented, AQ Max is one of the examples. It provides practical and accessible guidance for strengthening air quality management systems. Another example is SCAP's platform for the Regional Action Plan. It helps Asian countries share experiences, track progress, and align their efforts. So I see a great opportunity for governments to fully utilize these tools, learn from each other, and harmonize their actions. I would say collaboration does not always require new mechanisms. Often it starts with making better use of what already exists. That is my response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Felipe?
Sure, thanks for that question. And I think perhaps the good news is that there are many, I would say there are many opportunities for governments to work together, and there's a whole menu of options with different geometries, also different degrees of formality. One possibility, of course, are bilateral cooperation projects, like we've had from Switzerland with India, with China, with Mongolia on air pollution. Also fostering South-South cooperation, which we've been doing among countries in Latin America on air pollution, looking at transport emissions, for example. And then there are also more formal ways of collaboration, of course, and this depends a bit on the region you're in. For us in Switzerland, one for working internationally on air pollution, what has been really critical has been the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution. That's a mouthful, LRTAP in short, which also has 7 protocols. So that's then a formal convention that brings together, I think it's 51 governments working on air pollution. Here in Southeast Asia, ASEAN has a transboundary haze agreement with then a whole institutional structure under that. The colleague from JICA just mentioned also with UNESCAP, the RAPAP platform. So here also bring together member states, and then I would just mention Thailand has also initiated, for example, in terms of sub-regional collaboration, a clear sky strategy with to its neighboring countries, with Laos and Myanmar. So bring the 3 countries together to work on these shared priorities in terms of agricultural burning, for example. And finally, maybe just to come back to the CCAC, that's also an opportunity to bring together governments to work together, but not only among governments, and that's maybe the beauty also of the organization, but also working with development banks, with civil society organizations, with the private sector, and also with academia, all together in one platform.
Thank you very much. Dr. Zhang?
Okay, thank you for the question. My answer covers 3 aspects. One, I think, is the enforcement of global consensus. Actually, we now already have the WHO 2040 goal, but this is a non-binding goal for countries. I think one very straightforward work we can now do is that if countries are interested or countries think that air pollution is very important, they should put this global consensus into the national binding constraint on their policy formulation, which I think will be a very good prerequisite for the global air pollution control. And the second aspect, I think, is about knowledge sharing. This is not about the organization or other activities that, such as the BAQ we are holding today. I mean that when countries that are facing severe air pollution and they are trying to tackle air pollution, I think such countries should organize knowledge sharing by the government and put resources and efforts into this knowledge sharing. Because normally we think that actions that to reduce air pollution is already there, but you need to learn it from other experienced countries. And if you choose the wrong way without experience, then your investment will be much higher than organizing such of data sharing activities, knowledge sharing activities. And the third aspect, I think, is the tool sharing. Now we already have lots of numerical simulation tools already put in use, but for many resource-less countries, I think such tools is still too hard for them to follow up or to get started. So if we put more funding or put more resources into building many AI-based models, such as those that can transform emission changes to air quality changes very quickly, these kind of tools can help those countries with less resources to start action and to transform science into policy in a very immediate and a very simple way. That's my answer.
Thank you very much. And a living example from the African continent is we get inspired from listening to experts, and intergovernmental support and collaboration is essential. Thank you very much. I'll ask the second set of questions to Eric, Krista, June, and Miho. What is a practical or solution you have seen in your work that, if adopted globally or regionally, would contribute significantly to the fight for clean air? What is the practice or solution you have seen in your work that, if adopted globally or regionally, would contribute significantly to the fight for clean air? Thank you.
Thanks for this excellent question. I'm gonna point to 3 things, actually. Okay, so the first one, I just want to reiterate what I said at the very end of my presentation. I think the SDGs discussion needs to feature clean air, and this is because these are the people that are determining how budgets are allocated are paying a lot of attention to the SDGs, and they're using the SDGs in some ways as markers for how they're allocating funding. So I really want to push very strongly at the global level for greater recognition of the importance of clean air. We started very slow on the clean air campaign for the first set of SDGs, and they're going to start up in 2027. So I think we need to move there actively now. Then in terms of actual practical solutions, we talk a lot about capacity building. I think we really need to put an adjective in front of that and say sustainable capacity building. I think we do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of training, but making sure that capacity sticks, I think, is absolutely critical. And so in addition to the trainings and workshops and whatnot, I think we need to get a better sense of how to embed people in different agencies, both from the international community working directly with the ministries of environment, ministries of finance, and then I think we need to also do a better job of taking people that are working in those ministries of environment and finance and bring them out to the international organizations so they can understand how to develop funding proposals and, some of the more technical elements. So those types of sustainable capacity building programs, I think, are absolutely essential, and they have to happen not only at the national level, but also at the local level where the capacity elements tend to be most limited. And then I think the third thing I want to say is a greater cooperation between ministries of finance and ministries of environment. And I know you asked for practice, but this is a sort of future practice. One of my challenges, I think, for the BAQ for 2028 or 2029 is let's have a target of maybe 5% of the audience should be ministry from the Ministry of Finance. These are the people that are allocating resources, and we see that the budgets and the resources to actually do the things we want to do are not necessarily there. But I think we're building a stronger economic case for those allocations, and I think that type of collaboration is critical.
Thank you very much. And there's a challenge to BAQ for 2028, 2029. Thank you. Over to you, Christine.
Thanks for the question. So this is a question that's been on my mind, not least because when we started this session, I believe BAQ folks had put up a survey for funders and for folks who might have ideas for projects. So I'm really excited to see the results from that. It's also on my mind because we're working with Clean Air Fund to better understand the opportunity landscape of projects that could be attractive to a particular type of philanthropic donor, one who is currently not in the space. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to do that if we do more outreach and have some projects in mind that would be good stepping stones for those types of donors for that work. And in particular, something that's been on my mind, and I think echoes some of Eric's thoughts around capacity building, and it's something I heard from patients actually earlier this week in a pre-conference session, was around the question, what would a BAQ look like, for example, on the African continent? Something that helps make all of our parts be more than the sum. And I think that's a great question, for example, on the African continent. And there's existing efforts like the Africa Clean Air Network and the Clean Air Forum. What do those look like with greater support and sustainability? And that's an existing effort. What could we do more there? That's, I think, some low-hanging fruit.
Thank you very much. BAQ for Africa, eh? Thank you. June?
Yes, thank you. I think with this audience, I don't have to argue that transport is the source of emission, large portion of, if not the largest source of air pollutant emissions in many countries. So working particularly on this, UNEP is also supporting through our global electric mobility program many countries with its transition to e-mobility, but also what we continue and traditionally have been always focusing on is fuel and vehicle emission standards. And this, we have achieved, I think we can say that we have achieved quite a lot on the global sulfur campaign. Also was through the support of Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We have set a target for each region, and for Africa, and at some point for Asia, this was minimum Euro 4. Euro 4 vehicle emissions and also fuel standards. We can say that we have achieved that. Now this is the mainstream, more than the main for quite some years for this particular region. And now we can already say that Cambodia is already being very proactive about looking at Euro 6 standards, and also in transition stage. And we already know that Vietnam and Thailand have moved towards Euro 5. So this is a continued work area definitely for UNEP. And another because the question is about regional and global cooperation, I think another area to briefly touch upon is the work and increased cooperation on the management of global used vehicle trades. In fact, I have been in touch with a couple of colleagues at JICA also on this issue, because Japan is one of the biggest exporter of used vehicles. Our standpoint is not really about an outright ban of promoting outright ban of used vehicle imports, but rather how we bring together countries to make sure that these vehicles secondhand that are traded are safer and cleaner, and what can be done before they leave the countries of exports, but also after they have arrived the port of entry. So these are some of the actions that I think we have been working on and can continue to work on globally and regionally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miho.
Yes, so I would like to respond based on the practical experience in Kathmandu. I made a presentation about Kathmandu Declaration, where we collected the different the people from different sectors, and then I would say this was the great successful moment where we got together from different sectors and then discussed the same issues. We understand that we face the same similar issues, similar challenges, and then also we identify the similar impact. And then why not sharing those information? Why not sharing this data together if they are facing the similar issues in different countries? So it's quite important to share those data and then lesson learned together and then learn from each other. And I understand the financing issue, that's really critical. And then that also relates to the political will. If you have the big budget, probably the political will increase, and then it will be easier to implement the project. However, then we have to question, how do we and other way around, if we collect the voices from the ground, and then that collective voice can also raise or mobilize the resources. And we have to think that way. And so what we are going to do from now on is, for example, in South Asia, we approach the SACEP, which is the South Asia Cooperative Environmental Program. It's an intergovernmental organization. And they actually agree with our idea and then tackle this open burning issues. So like this, we need to get together and understand the priority of the other people. If we understand the priority of the other people, and then we can use the same language. Like I showed you several numbers at the beginning of my presentation, you have to choose the right numbers to talk to the other people. If we talk, and we understand that waste management is an issue, but if we talk about from the waste aspects, probably the climate people will not understand or will not be interested in talking to us. But if we talk about the CO2 emission that we could reduce by eliminating the open burning of waste, and then they will be interested in talking. And then we can discuss on the same table. So in that way, if we want to increase the political will, we have to understand their political will. Then we can discuss together and then reach for the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to all panelists, I'm going to ask one question and for a few words. Often the first steps can seem difficult or the most daunting. What advice would you give to policymakers as the most important first action they can take in addressing air pollution? Thank you.
All right, it's my honor. So my answer is very simple, that take action immediately is the most important first action. Yes, normally the first action is always the hardest, but as we can see that first actions are always the most benefit. So in China, we already see this kind of outcome that at the very beginning we don't even have a very clear idea about where the pollution came from, but we just tackle several sources and we use those that are not costly measures, then we can already get very much improvement in air quality. So my suggestion is that for those countries, if they want to tackle air pollutions, you just take actions. Normally, it's easy to identify pollution sources at the very beginning. If you have higher SO2 emissions, you control coal consumption. If you have high NO2 emissions, you control transportation pollution. And sometimes you don't even need monitoring sites. You can just use your nose. You can distinguish coal from biomass. It's very easy. So just take action and it will make difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Miho?
Yes, I just mentioned that we need to understand each other first. If you need to work with a different sector, because our focus is different from the others. So the first step we need to take is to understand each other and then look at this issue from different perspectives, different aspects. And if we understand that the different aspects, then we will be able to find the solution together. Thank you.
Thank you. June?
Yes, thank you. My response to this question will be in the similar vein to the two previous respondents. It's that one would be act now, second would be work together. Acting now in the sense that some countries have a critical window for interventions before more vehicles enter their vehicle fleet. When countries like Cambodia, for example, which is a growing economy, and we are projecting to see a lot of vehicle growth, and if unmanaged, if we, without proper handle on what types of second-hand vehicles they are allowing into the countries, what are some of the measures that can put in place per vehicle category in terms of vehicle, efficiency standards. You do have I think, critical window to prevent a lot of air pollution down the line. In terms of working together, often what we find when we bring stakeholders together to discuss the new, vehicle emissions and standards being proposed is that we are quite surprised to find some of these stakeholders talk to each other for the first time, and they also discover what they are working on for the first time. Different ministries realized they have overlapping areas of work. Different ministries realized that no one was doing that needed to be done. So this, again, the continued consultative processes and giving the stakeholders ample opportunities to talk together, and I think that's very critical to bringing the roadmap to actual implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think countries face different circumstances, so the most important first step depends on the specific context. Having said that, in all cases, capacity development is crucial, as we discussed in today's plenary. So my advice is to strengthen human resources.
So I totally agree with your comments that it's going to depend, of course, on where someone is with their clean air policy evolution in a country. But in the cases where that open data threshold has not been crossed, can be a big initial step, and it's not the case that data on its own somehow drives change, but what we have seen in several countries is that initial data point can start a conversation, can kickstart a series of actions from different parts of civil society, research within the government, and even as someone else pointed out, that it can accelerate regional progress with sharing. We've seen this in the Gambia, that started off with a monitor that they got donated 3 years ago from a company. It led to a conversation with the government. The government took on the instrumentation. That led to this legislation I had mentioned around PM 2.5 air quality standards in the making, and now they're working with that data that they had originally put to work with the Ministry of Health on, mitigation of hotspots. So it started with that one data point and led to all this other work, and that seems that much more beyond the initial group that started that data. So it can be a waterfall effect, and I think that's quite powerful.
Incentives for implementation, the political incentives, the economic incentives, the reputational incentives, and you need to think about how those incentives are structured, for the politicians that, some countries are getting elected, some countries getting selected, the bureaucrats that are designing the policy and implementing the policy, the on-the-ground stakeholders that are operationalizing the policy, and then the people that are affected. I think when we think about those incentives and who wins and loses from those policies, then we can think about, how to create mechanisms for folks that might lose from the policy and compensate them. And we can also think about mechanisms that when we have winners to actually magnify or amplify some of those wins, so that they can, build, as Miho said, the political will or the institutional will and drive to move things forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I think my co-panelists have already covered almost all. I would just say, I would echo understanding the main sources of air pollution to know where to focus efforts, but also at the same time to take action and to not wait for perfect data. And I would just add also that now we're lucky to have an incredible wealth of resources that are already available. So there's really no need to start from scratch or to reinvent the wheel. From guidelines on emission inventories, model regulations, also lessons learned on successes, but also on failures, what has not worked in other contexts. There's so much out there. So I would encourage to reach out to the CCC, to check the AQMX, but also to tell the development partners you're working with that it's a priority for you and that you want to work on that. So to the UN, to the multilateral development banks and the bilateral partners.
Thank you very much to my panelists. We had a long list of questions and a lot came out of this. I will just summarize a few things to take home. Looking at our existing multilateralism to support air quality management and interventions, but not only waiting for the global multilateralism, looking at the local ones, bilateralism that we have, looking at practical solutions from the SDG, for example. If air quality is considered as one of the SDG goals, we know that developing countries, for example, they consider the SDGs quite seriously in policy making and decision making and resource allocations. And in our countries, including performance agreements of politicians. So those kind of initiatives do make a difference on the ground when there is a political will and there's a political target. For the BAQ, consider bringing in a specific percentage of treasury participants, and I would also say from the Minister of Health, because their contribution will assist air quality in making the case. In terms of interventions that countries can take, start now, don't wait for all the information. One data point can make a difference and start a conversation. In capacity, present capacity that must stick. And don't wait to have all knowledge. Take what you have and work with that. Thank you very much for your knowledge and for your contribution. And the session is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers and panelists for the driving action and solution